Good evening. Just got in from work. It's 6 p.m. and tonight we're just going to make a very quick and easy chili con carne using minced beef, some red kidney beans which we've washed and drained, some tomato, garlic, tomato paste, salt and pepper, habanero chilies, very hot. We've only used one, chopped finely, one large chopped onion, and tonight we're going to season with a little bit of oregano, a little bit of sage. And of course chili beef traditionally uses diced pork, but it's very good with beef, and that's how people mostly make it nowadays. So I'm just going to show you the process. I've chopped these, they took 2 minutes. And it's very important how we get this started in the pan. Okay, so now we're at the stove. We're using the biggest burner on the hob top, and we're going to get some heat into the pan. So we need to be very hot. So we'll just put that there, and to start with we're going to put into this some coconut oil. Obviously it's a healthier oil. It doesn't have an overpowering taste, but we're going to make sure there's enough in there to fry the beef until it's brown. It's very important we get some colour on the beef, and that will help us colour the sauce. Then we're going to add some, with the beef we'll add some onions, and we're going to add our chilli, and we'll start cooking that in. Very important that softens and the beef goes brown. So I'll just put the chilies because that's on my spatula, and then the onions. And what we're going to do is we're just going to wait until we get a sizzle before we put our beef in. Just make sure we don't drop any onions on the floor, and we'll make sure that all goes into the pan. So there you go. So you can hear it now starting to just gently sizzle, and the onion's not cut up fine. When we simmer this, before we serve it, we can simmer it for as little as half an hour, 40 minutes, especially if we're cooking it for a midweek dinner, or if we're cooking it for a weekend event, we keep adding water and reducing it, and adding water and reduce it, and we can add different things, and it can be an 8-hour braise, and that will concentrate all the flavours. There's lots of things we can use in here, different herbs and spices. I just like oregano and sage, and the tomato and garlic, but you can put chocolate. Dark chocolate is a mole sauce, very famous in Mexico. It will give a dark richness to the sauce, and if you don't use too much, it gives a very rich feel to the sauce, and it's not too sweet. That's dark chocolate. You don't want to use milk chocolate or white chocolate, it's not going to work. So you'll see now we've started getting some sound, and we're going to add, at this stage, we're going to add a little bit of garlic, and so we're starting to cook. I'll just put 1 dessert spoon of garlic in there. I'll probably put a little bit more, just we've got 1 kilo of mince. We have to be aware of how much we've got. I'm going to put a little squirt of black pepper. We don't need too much because we've got the chili to provide the heat. So I'm also going to use a bit of salt. Again, I use pink rock salt, no bleaches, no anti-caking agents. We'll just put a little bit of salt in there. We can adjust that later if we need to. And I'm going to sprinkle some herbs. Now we've got, again, a dessert spoon. I'm going to use maybe half. Remember, dried herbs are more concentrated than fresh herbs. So it's about a teaspoon, level teaspoon of oregano. And I'm also going to use approximately the same of sage, and it's equivalent to 2 teaspoons of fresh sage or fresh oregano. So we'll just stir that in. You'll hear there's a nice sizzle. You'll see the onions are starting to soften. You'll see the little flecks of chili in there, which is what we're looking for as well. And then we're just going to put the whole piece of beef in, but the minced beef, we're just going to chop it into smaller pieces as we put it in. This will help it cook more evenly, and hopefully develop a nice colour on all of the different parts of the beef. It's almost like making stock. We've just got to make sure that we develop some colour on the beef. So we just chop that in little bit by little bit. We can do this on a table, of course, but I'm just showing you how easy it is just with a spatula, and that will just help the meat break up and cook. And I've got another little tip in a moment. that I'll show you if we've still got some lumps in the mince. There's another little tip that helps it break apart. So we've now got a hot pan, so I'm going to use a cloth just to hold the handle, and we're going to push the meat down into the onions, and we're going to break it down a bit further. So just make sure that we continue getting that nice sizzle, and you'll notice that this Black Angus beef is extremely lean. Okay, just briefly, we're about halfway, and we're just breaking up now. Now the little trick I was going to show you was actually with half a capful of malt vinegar, which just helps the meat break down when there's clumps. But this is the first time I've made chili con carne with Black Angus beef, and if you'll notice, it's broken down beautifully. Now the juice in the bottom is what little juice has come out of the beef, and you'll see that nice brown colour. And that's what we're looking for. That's making its own stock as it's in the pan. We've not added any more fat or any more water, and you'll see that the minced beef breaks apart really easily, and that is absolutely fantastic. With cheaper mince with a higher fat content, it tends to clump a little bit like meatballs, but this has all broken down really nicely, and we're just about halfway. I'm just going to evaporate all of that liquid. Okay, so back with it now. You'll see that a lot of the liquid now is nearly gone. That means it's concentrated those beefy flavours, coating the beef. The onions now have gone soft. The chili and the herbs have got through the whole mix, and it's probably about 8 minutes after we started. We're now going to add some cans of chopped tomato. We like to leave them. This one's just a cheap tin of tomatoes. It's an own brand. This one is also an own brand from a different supermarket. So just go for the offers. Find the cheapest tomatoes you can. You can get these for about 80 cents. And we're just going to mix those tomatoes in with the beef and let that simmer together just for a while. And at this stage we need to just assess how thick the sauce is. Now it depends how much gravy or sauce you like with your chili beef. We can cook it down until it's really quite firm. I'm going to add some tomato paste to help deepen the flavour and deepen the colour a little bit later. So I'm just looking at this. We may well put a little bit of water in here. Now of course we can use beef stock, but I think we've generated enough flavour in there already. So I'm just going to add maybe 250 mils. This is a ½ litre jug, so maybe 250 mils of water, and that's just going to help it cook in some juice and simmer. Now as I said before, this probably needs a ½ an hour simmering before we put the tomato paste and the red kidney beans. Now the red kidney beans, they're already cooked, so if we put them in and cook them and simmer them for 8 hours, they're going to fall apart and they really won't look right. So we can put the beans in towards the end of the cooking, just so they cook through, and they add texture and taste, and obviously a little bit of fibre. But in terms of the flavour, this is full of flavour already. So the beans really are about making it traditional and just adding beans to your sauce. A little bit of carbohydrate, of course. So we're just going to now simmer this, and we have to judge when we're going to cook the rice. So we're serving this on rice today. We're going to leave this simmering maybe for ½ an hour. We're going to use basmati rice, which is the best quality rice. We've got 1 cup of basmati rice here, and we've got a saucepan with 2½ cups of water. And the way we're going to cook the rice is we're going to bring it up to the boil, turn it off, leave the lid on, and the rice will absorb the liquid. You won't need to wash it or strain it. By the time your chili is ready, your rice will be in the pan, it will be hot, and you should be able to fluff it with a fork and serve it in a bowl. Okay, so we're back to it now. As you'll see, about 5 minutes ago we put the beans in, and the beans have helped absorb some of the liquid. Now it looks a bit wet on the top, but when we start turning it over, you'll see it's that saucy consistency that I think goes really nicely on rice. If you want to use this for tacos or on chili dogs or anything that requires it to be drier, then quite simply you just keep simmering it away until obviously it dries out. Now because there's a high acidity content with the tomatoes, As long as there's liquid, it shouldn't stick to the pan. Obviously, we've not got it on a high heat, we've got it on a medium heat just at the moment. And just to finish it for the last 5 minutes of cooking, I'm just going to put a little bit of tomato paste. It will help, obviously, the colour and the flavour, but also it will just do that final thicken, just so, and there's two dessert spoons full, and that will just help thicken that final time, and we're just going to cook that in. Just make sure it's stirred in, there's no big lumps of tomato paste. Tomato paste is already cooked. We don't need to cook it out at all, and that's just going to give us that lovely brown, glistening surface. You'll see there's no fat line on the surface, it's all amalgamated into the sauce, and that's because we've cooked the tomatoes out, and of course we only started with a little bit of coconut oil. So that now is looking pretty much as I would want my chili beef. And we're just going to look quickly at the rice. Now the rice, as previously mentioned, we had a cup of basmati and 2.5 cups of water, and we get it to the boil, we turn it off, we leave the lid on, and the rice now is cooked, and we can fluff it with a fork. It's just an easy way to cook rice. Now this obviously is a little bit starchy, but that's because we haven't washed it and drained it and all those types of things. So this is just an easy way to cook rice, and when we mix it in with the chili beef sauce, it's going to taste fantastic. So we're just going to portion this into 3 bowls, and you'll see we're going to make like a small nest for the chili sauce to sit in. And so now, with the chili beef, I'll just lift it over underneath the lights. So you can see now, with the last couple of minutes, and 2 spoons of tomato paste, we're going to have a really beautiful colour and a really nice, thick chili that we're going to put onto our rice. And as I say, if you wanted less juice, then just reduce it. Now, just a couple of options. You can, if you choose to use red wine instead of water. I don't think that's traditional, but it tastes very good, and it gives a nice deep purple colour to the sauce. But I like the traditional brown tomatoey sauce, and we're going to serve it just over the rice. And you'll see we'll get the red chili beans and the sauce and the beef, and we're going to serve 3 people from this. And you'll see from what's left in the pan, from 1 kilo of beef, we could easily serve at least another 5 people. This is a really good recipe for barbecues. We make in advance. We can sit this whole oven-proof pan inside the barbecue, and as people have hot dogs or steak or whatever, they can have a nice spoon of chili on the side of their barbecue. If we've got some fresh herbs, we can sprinkle the top with some fresh herbs.